GhostBSD is a Linux distro stripped back to the essentials. Based on FreeBSD, it's a great option for lower-end hardware, making the desktop experience modern and customizable while being much easier on your system below the bonnet. Because there are so many different options out there for your free and open source operating system, it can be hard to figure out what the best option is for you. Sifting between Linux distros is difficult. Debian and its derivatives, Ubuntu and its derivatives, Fedora, Arch and OpenSUSE, the list goes on. However, what if the best choice for you isn't actually technically Linux? Here we review GhostBSD, a FreeBSD based Unix OS designed for a simple desktop experience, to see if it's the right fit for you. GhostBSD First Impressions. One of the things that always strikes me when I try out a BSD OS is how similar they often feel. I know that Linux and BSD are both Unix-like operating systems, but it's easy to forget that because the source code for things like GNOME, or in GhostBSD's case, Mate, are free and open, they're easily ported to other operating systems like GhostBSD. It helps me focus on the changes that are meaningful, like how GhostBSD works under the hood and the choices the project made to accomplish the mission of providing a simple desktop OS for general use. I immediately feel welcomed by GhostBSD. Aside from the techno mumbo jumbo that you get on first boot, where you have to choose how to start the system, it's great to see there's a friendly looking theme and presentation about the OS. It feels very much like a free open source software desktop OS that I'm used to, and it's still reasonably friendly to use. This is important because giving your grandparents something that you're familiar with on a laptop or a desktop is a great way to help them out, but if it's something that's user hostile in some way, they'll just keep using their tablet that's too small for them to see. The GhostBSD installation process. Something I dislike about GhostBSD is the installation process. There isn't an icon to install, so you have to jump into the terminal and run the GBI command. This method of getting to the installer is definitely not so user-friendly, leaving you to have to find the documentation to get it installed onto your system's drive. I do find this a little bit of a letdown. The installer itself is also geared more towards a power user, so if you don't know what you're doing, you could end up with a configuration that you don't really want. For example, if you have another OS installed on your disk, very common with first-time users, it defaults to a full disk installation rather than slotting into the open space on your disk like Fedora would with its Anaconda installer, for example. Plus you end up with Fish rather than Bash as your default shell, which isn't great for beginners as there are tons of guides written on Bash that may or may not work with Fish. GhostBSD user experience. Overall, as a Linux user, it's easy to find your way around GhostBSD. The Mate desktop is familiar to almost all of us who are familiar with Linux, as are most of the tools available in the OS. I particularly like that there are already 4 virtual desktops pre-configured, as those are now an integral part of my workflow and are ultimately what keep drawing me back to Linux and BSD. Another virtue of the desktop environments that we love is the ability to customize and tweak to suit their different needs. For example, you can move the title bar buttons for close, minimize and maximize from right side to left side if you like, which is nice for macOS users. There are also freedoms associated with updates and update mechanisms. You can either use PKG like you might use apt or DNF from the command line in Linux, or use the GUI package management tools. The applications that are installed are all necessary. It's exactly what you might expect to find in your typical lean open source desktop OS configuration, with no frills and just the essential applications. There is not much to remark on with the user experience. It's a very simple and friendly version of the Mate desktop that's designed to be light on system resources and simple to use. Overall, I think there's no way you could go wrong. Make sure you check out some of our other distro reviews like Deepin, Clear Linux or MX Linux. Links to all of that in the description. Okay, as always, thank you so much for watching. That's all for now. See you next time.